Welcome back to On the Move with Victor Shi. This is Victor Shi. It is Monday, June 19th, and today we are going to talk about what is next in the legal investigations into Donald Trump. What's next in the Mar-a-Lago documents case? How does that potentially affect other investigations into Trump? What is the likelihood that Jack Smith charges Trump for his role in January 6th? Luckily, my guest with me today has the answers to all of those questions, and he is one of my favorite lawyers, Glenn Kirschner, who I'm sure all of you have seen either from his many appearances on MSNBC or from his amazing YouTube channel, Justice Matters. Glenn, it is so great to see you. Thank you so much for joining me this morning.
Hey, Victor, great to be back with you.
Of course. So it's been more than a week since we've read the Trump indictment. And now that we've had time to process what we've read, I'm wondering if kind of what your biggest takeaways are and what you would say to someone who maybe doesn't know too much about this case and what they should know about it.
Yeah, a number of important takeaways. First of all, because it's a speaking indictment, it sort of reads like a short story, a really impressive short story. And I think one of the main takeaways is the witnesses who are identified in the indictment, not by name, but by designation. For example, some of the witnesses who will provide some of the most sharply incriminating evidence against Donald Trump at trial are his own lawyers. They're designated as Trump lawyer number 2, Trump lawyer number 3, Trump lawyer number 1, his own employees, Trump employee 1, Trump employee 2. These are the people who are going to help take Donald Trump down and hold him accountable for his crimes. That's a really important takeaway from the indictment. Second big takeaway is that Jack Smith decided that he would include information in the indictment about crimes that Donald Trump committed in New Jersey at his Bedminster golf course, crimes that are not charged in the Florida indictment. They are there because they are relevant to his ongoing unlawful retention of classified documents and mishandling of national defense information, but they're not charged crimes in Florida. What does that signal, Victor? You know what? I am not a betting man. I'm not a high roller. $1 is my betting limit, but I would bet $1. The next federal indictment we see will be dropped in federal district court in New Jersey because there is no way, in my estimation, Jack Smith would reveal those crimes. And mind you, those are crimes, it appears, that Donald Trump committed in violation of our nation's espionage laws, the Espionage Act, Chapter 37 of Title 18 of the United States Code. No way Jack Smith is disclosing that to us and then declining to charge Donald Trump for those espionage crimes. So I think that will be the next indictment we see. Thereafter, I think the next federal indictment we see will be for the insurrection, what Donald Trump orchestrated in the run-up to and on January 6th. And the one last takeaway is the picture is emerging that almost all of the witnesses who are incriminating Donald Trump and who will testify at trial, this is not a group of angry Democrats, as Donald Trump is always wont to say. These are Republicans. These are not only his own lawyers and employees. If you watch the Sunday shows yesterday, they're his own cabinet members. They are his own executive branch officials. When we just all saw the Bill Barrs and the Boltons and the Espers of the world directly incriminate Donald Trump on the Sunday shows, I predict those same men will be incriminating Donald Trump in court when they are called as witnesses. These cases will be proved with Republican voices.
And I hope those Republican voices will inspire other Republicans who may support Trump to, see the light a little bit and to hopefully change their mind. But I want to ask you about Bedminster, which is really interesting because one of the biggest concerns that I've heard a lot about in recent days is Judge Eileen Cannon. And I'm wondering first, how concerned are you about the type of bias that she might bring to this case? And also, if she doesn't end up kind of ruling in, I guess, a fair and impartial way, is there any chance that Jack Smith could bring the case to, say, Bedminster or DC for that matter?
Yeah, I'm worried about Eileen Cannon. At the moment, she's the presiding judge over the Florida federal prosecution. She was famously or infamously overturned by the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals, who found she acted in a lawless way and did an enormous favor for Donald Trump when she presided over Donald Trump's efforts to stop the Department of Justice from investigating his crimes with respect to some of the classified documents that now form the basis of this very prosecution. There are two sets of rules or laws that are in play as a result of Eileen Cannon being involved and presiding over this case. One is a rule of ethics, and it has to do with conflicts. When you have either a conflict or, more importantly, simply an appearance of conflict, you as a judge are required to remove yourself from the case. Those are the rules of ethics. Let's shift over to the federal law of disqualification. 28 United States Code Section 455 says that a judge shall, not discretionary, a judge shall disqualify themselves from a case if their impartiality can reasonably be questioned. Victor, there's a reason that the law of recusal, the bar is set so low on the conflict front and the disqualification front. It's because if there is even an appearance of problem or partiality, it undermines the faith that we have in the process, and it undermines our ability to have confidence in the outcome of the trial. And the thing is, there are tons of other federal judges whose impartiality cannot be questioned, whether they were appointed by Republican presidents or Democrats. It doesn't matter. Eileen Cannon should do the right thing. She should recuse herself. But if she doesn't, I think Jack Smith should file a motion to have her removed and fight it out in court. This is too important a case, perhaps the biggest case in our nation's history. You can't just sit back and hope for the best with a judge like Eileen Cannon.
Yeah, and I was going to ask whether or not you thought part of the reason why Jack Smith brought this case and charges was because he knew that it would be so strong that even someone like Eileen Cannon maybe couldn't rule against him. Do you think?
No, I don't think. No. I don't think the risk of having Eileen Cannon as the presiding judge really entered into Jack Smith's determination. I can't speak for him, but I think he decided where venue was right. That is, where were these criminal charges most properly brought? And because it was in a court in which Eileen Cannon was one of the presiding judges, it didn't matter. He had to do the right thing. I also believe, though, once he brings the criminal charges in New Jersey, that will have nothing to do with Judge Eileen Cannon. And people are saying, well, that must be his plan B. No, this is all part of his plan A. This is all part of one unified plan to hold Donald Trump accountable for all of his crimes against the United States.
Very interesting. There's also been a really interesting question about the role that the jurors will have in this as it relates to classified information. How will that work in terms of them kind of accessing classified information? Will they all get some sort of security clearance in this? What will that process look like?
No, jurors aren't going to be required to go through a background check and get security clearances. But what they do is they basically they provide the jury with a key, and that key will be when they hear evidence that classified document number 1 refers to person A or country B. That's all we'll know as the public who is consuming this trial in whatever way we can, probably not through real-time broadcast or recordings. But so we won't really know what's being discussed, but the jurors will have a key. And so when they hear person A, they'll know precisely the identity of that person. When they hear country B, they'll know what country that is. So it's a way to sort of mask the substance of the information being discussed in court, mask it from the public, but make sure the jury has everything they need. And importantly, that the defense team has everything it needs to zealously cross-examine the witnesses and make sure they're, representing the interests of the defendant.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned the public, and I want to ask you about the public because this is such an unprecedented case, and there's been a lot of talk about cameras in the courtroom and a large debate about whether or not there should even be kind of those cameras. But I feel like there should be an exception made by the Chief Justice for this unprecedented case because it is so historic. I'm wondering what you think and if it affects sort of the atmospherics of what happens in a trial. You've been in a courtroom before, obviously. Does that kind of impact the way that lawyers and jurors present themselves anyway? And what do you think about the whole debate about cameras?
Yeah, I think with respect to how lawyers and witnesses and parties comport themselves, whether there are cameras in the courtroom or not, is really up to the individual person. I know it wouldn't impact me at all. Now, I never practiced with cameras in the courtroom, but I don't believe I would have changed one word of what I did if there were cameras in the courtroom. This is such an important trial, and it's so important for people to be able to have confidence in the fairness of the proceedings and the reliability of the result. The best way to ensure that is if they can watch it for themselves in real time. I really hope the Chief Justice allows cameras in the courtroom, even just this one time, because in federal court, cameras are generally prohibited. But if we can't see this, then I think we have less hope of persuading the people who thus far have not been persuaded, either because they're unwilling or unable to discern truth from fiction, facts from fantasy. If they're watching it with their own eyes, if it is broadcast in real time, I think we have a better shot at persuading people who, for whatever reason, are still, Donald Trump devotees.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think it'll definitely spark conversations. I just think about what the Johnny Depp and Amber Heard trial did for young people. It gets conversations started, and I think that's one of the most important things for hopefully building a more civically engaged sort of generation. But I want to ask you about one event last week that featured Letitia James. I think Alex Wagner interviewed Letitia James. She said that her case and other maybe state level cases might take a back seat. How does what happened in this Mar-a-Lago investigation potentially affect other cases on the state and local levels against Trump?
Yeah, I think Attorney General Letitia James from New York got out over her skis a bit because she purported to talk about the upcoming, we believe, indictments in Georgia by Fani Willis. She talked about the District Attorney Alvin Bragg's prosecution, which is up and running in New York. And for some reason, she said, my civil case and all those criminal cases will all have to be suspended. That turns out not to be accurate because Fani Willis promptly said, my case will not be impacted at all by the fact that Donald Trump has now been federally indicted. I don't think we've heard from Alvin Bragg, but I suspect he'll take the same position. But now, for A.G. James' case in New York, that's a civil case. That's just about money. And it's also about potentially barring Donald Trump and his adult children from sitting on corporate boards, doing certain business in the state of New York for a number of years. But here's the thing. Civil cases often do take a back seat to criminal prosecutions. When I was a prosecutor, federal prosecutor in D.C. in the U.S. Attorney's Office, I sometimes was prosecuting a case, and there were parallel civil cases ongoing at the same time. For instance, somebody might be suing the DC city government or the police department, alleging that they were negligent in, providing a safe space in schools or on metro platforms. Unfortunately, I've had murders at both of those locations. So what we do under those circumstances, we want to do everything we can to protect the integrity of our criminal investigation. So we'll file a motion to intervene in the civil case. We will ask the judge in the civil case, can you please stay the civil proceedings until the conclusion of the criminal case? And generally, the judges would grant those motions because, civil suits are about money, but criminal prosecutions are about the safety of the community, vindicating the right of victims, and making sure the defendant, whose liberty interest is at stake, also gets a fair shake in the process.
Sure. Very interesting. What about January 6th? Does this case make it more likely that Jack Smith will charge Trump for his role on January 6th, do you think, or do you think they're kind of two separate things and one doesn't kind of indicate a charge on the other?
So legally speaking, I don't know that the Mar-a-Lago documents indictment makes it more or less likely that Jack Smith will bring an indictment for the insurrection. Atmospherically, though, I would say, now that the barrier has been broken and a criminal former president of the United States has been indicted twice over, I do think it sort of changes the legal landscape, but only atmospherically, not legally. Sure. And I do think it becomes a little bit easier and almost more usual that a former president is indicted for all of his crimes, not just some of his crimes. So I think we put this in the plus column.
So the last question I have for you, I mean, you and I, we talk a lot about young people and kind of this moment in history and justice for young people. How do you hope young people will remember this moment in history? I mean, we're seeing the first ever former president get indicted, not once, but twice. I mean, it seems like ongoing indictments are coming. What do you hope young people will take away from kind of what we're all experiencing, which seems so unprecedented?
Well, I hope that they can now hold fast to the reality that no person is above the law. I think that was almost a passe notion because we don't often see powerful, connected, influential politicians, among others, held accountable for their crimes. Now I think they have prodded that saying into wakefulness. And I think the younger generations will have a concrete example of how, when high government officials commit crimes, they will be held accountable. And I hope they will also take away from it the non-negotiable need for ethics and honor in public service, because we need good public servants who are willing to do the right thing, even under really difficult circumstances. Those are some important lessons that I hope folks will take away.
100%. And Glenn Kirschner, thank you so much for all that you do, for showing all of us that justice matters here, as your sign in the background says. Thank you so much, Glenn.
Thanks, Victor.
Of course. Thanks so much. Well, Glenn Kirschner is, I'm sure, all of our favorite legal analysts. He's really just kind of is able to put things into such great context. So thank you, Glenn, for joining me today. And I can't end this show without saying happy Juneteenth. This is a really amazing moment just for America, hopefully reclaiming sort of Black identity, Black pride. This is sort of the best that we have as Americans. So happy Juneteenth to everyone who celebrates. Hopefully everyone can take a moment and just remember this important date in history, this often overlooked and ignored date in history. So happy Juneteenth to everyone, and take a moment to just reflect on kind of the importance of today. I know I will be doing that. I'm in DC and I'm going to make a stop to the African American History Museum. So go take a moment to reflect on what important day today is. Just a couple of programming notes. So as you all know, this show streams live at 11 a.m. Eastern every day, right here on youtube.com/Politicon or on my Twitter channel. But because I'm in DC for the summer and working, we are now going to be shifting the show daily to 6 p.m. Eastern time, 3 p.m. Pacific time. Same channels, same location, youtube.com/Politicon. And my Twitter handle, again, that is 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific. It'll be live. And then after it goes live, it'll be right up on the YouTube channel as well as my Twitter pages for you to watch afterward if you missed it. But there is a time shift now. And this will just be for the next couple of months. Don't worry, we'll be back to our original time, but just for the next couple of months to make my life easier. And hopefully, we'll see, maybe it'll work. But at 6 p.m. Eastern time, we will be going live. And that will start tomorrow. And we have some great guests coming up this week, including Olivia Juliana, Representative Jasmine Crockett, Representative Stacey Plaskett. So we've got some great guests coming up for you this week that you do not want to miss. Again, it'll be at 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific, right here on youtube.com/Politicon or on my Twitter handle at VictorShe2020. Happy Juneteenth, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode with Glenn Kirschner. I hope you will check out his YouTube channel, Justice Matters. And I will see you tomorrow at our new time at 6 p.m. Eastern. Thanks so much.